the Holy Quran.
But isn't the Quran only for Muslims?
Not at all. Its teachings are addressed to all humanity, from heads of state right down to everyday people like us.
What does it teach us?
Well, it's a book of life for life. No thinking person should pass through life without it.
How interesting. Where can I get a copy?
Easy, at a cost of only £5 from the IPCI, 124 Queen Street, Durban.
Gather them together, black and white, Bishop Tutu, everyone, come together and repent for lying on God. Now, I would ask you as a Christian, one who proclaims and professes to have met Jesus, how are you and your people going to develop 2 million jobs for the country? All right. How are you going to stop making the Pope white, Mary white, Jesus white, Moses white when they were not white? When and where are you going to develop a mass education program and not tell the people to wait till they get to heaven? When are you going to tell the man with 47 cars to sell those cars and give that money back to the poor people so that they might have a decent life? When are you going to repent on behalf of the Christians for enslaving the people, the descendants of whom are in this building tonight? When are you going to repent for causing the slaves to be prostitutes? When are you going to repent and ask forgiveness? When are you going to ask the white people to give back at least half of the 87% of the land that they stole in view of the fact that the Bible said, thou shalt not steal? When are you going to persuade your Christian white brothers to not control 95% of every asset in this country? And finally, when are you going to persuade the white people to give to the Tswana tribe all the Kimberly property that was the birthplace of all of the diamonds, and give them an accounting for all the money due to them? When?
I have not studied much, but what I do know, I have met Jesus.
Thank you.
And I know he has changed my life.
So you don't want to answer the question.
That he will change many other
Thank
people
you, sir.
if accept him.
Can I have the next question?
All right,
please?
brother.
Thank you very much.
Keep the faith. When white people say they're white, they're not referring to the color of their skin. If Margaret Thatcher gets a suntan, I don't know what it would look like, but let's just assume that Margaret Thatcher got a suntan. You wouldn't call her a colored woman, would you? You would still call her a white woman, even though her skin may be brown. What do you mean when you say white? You mean that she is from Europe. So whether she's Italian, white, Sweden, white, England, white, France, white. White means coming from Europe. Black means coming from Africa. So whether we're fair skin, brown skin, dark skin, East Coast, West Coast, North, South, if we're from the black continent and we've been here 300 years, we are black people from the black continent. All over the world, 1 billion people uniting through Ramadan. That's why I'm hopeful and optimistic that by the year 2050, when 1 out of every 2 persons would have been born a Muslim, we would have the first real meaningful opportunity for a permanent world peace. Assalamu alaikum. This country could explode. Who will be the first targets? The businessmen, the lawyers, those who didn't want the masses in their office. They will come without your permission. So if Hitler killed 6 million Jews who were European Jews, and Hitler was a European, give the Jews part of Germany, not of Palestine. Sure, he works, so do I. Raising the kids is not easy. Cooking and washing and taking them to school, this is not easy. He doesn't seem to understand I work too. What I'm trying to find out, and you may know better than I do, tell me specifically, if I got this, everyone in this room, and we went out to the homeland and we started teaching people how to read who did not know how to read, what would the government do? What I'm saying to you in closing is that there is a great opportunity to really be a new South Africa and a new Africa. Forget the begging. There will be no gifts. I don't care what the World Bank tells you and the International Monetary Fund tells you. It's crumbs. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's a pleasure for me to be with you. It's always refreshing to talk to young people and to have an interaction with the youth. That's where you learn a great deal. If you will not quote me, I will share with you an insight. Old people sometimes are boring. They do not keep up, and they say the same things they said for the last 20 years. You may notice it in some of your classes. And they don't change the lectures. They don't read new material. They do not keep up with the times. However, there are some old people who keep up with the times more than young people, because some young people are boring, because they don't read, and they don't think, they don't reflect, and they don't recognize their own abilities. So I'm neither young nor old, but I can assure you, you have made a major mistake by coming here this afternoon instead of studying. There are a number of ideas that I would like to share with you. I was thinking about discussing with you some of my early background, what it was like growing up. But I got bored even thinking about having to reflect and repeat that story again. I thought about talking about the challenges of development, and that was appealing to me, but it's so vague. What does that really mean? I mean, everyone talks in terms of challenges, and you get tired of challenges. So I decided that I would like to start with a observation that we have used in America and throughout the world to demonstrate to young people the mental ability that they have. Above all other things, not considering in the narrow, restricted sense religion, my greatest love is ideas. I love ideas, but I have not always loved ideas. For a long period in my life, I hated to read. I like sports, I liked entertainment, but I hated to read. I love football, and my
seniors always told me that I was too small. And I could never figure out what they were talking about. They said, "You're not big enough." So what could they possibly mean? Because for me, I was always the standard in athletic competition. So other people were either tall or short, but I was the model. I was the standard. So how could they say I was not big enough? They told me, "You're going to get hurt," especially at the college level, because the gentlemen tend to get larger and larger, and I was still weighing 130 pounds. But I really loved the competition. And that's what helped me do chores around the house. When we had a big lawn, you had to do the cutting with a little sickle. So I said, that's fine, because that's going to build up my wrist, and I'll be able to throw the football better. When we built walls, retaining walls, I said, this is excellent, because this wheelbarrow is going to build my muscles. And that evening when I felt tired, they kept telling me, the sorer you are, the more muscles you're building. So I kept going to see how sore I could become. In effect, I had a way of measuring how close I was getting to my goals. And that's what I needed. It wasn't enough to set goals. I wanted to know how close I was to the goal. So when I looked in the mirror and moved my arm in the proper direction, if I saw something that resembled a muscle, I said, I am on the right track. Fortunately for me, I did not really get seriously injured. On one occasion, I broke my hand on defense in the American football game. And I was playing quarterback, so I couldn't, on offense, throw the football. So I was useless to the team. So I persuaded the coach to switch me to end so that I could try to catch the football. Fortunately for me, with one hand, like you see in the movies, I caught the football, put my broken hand to the side, and ran for a touchdown. Only the coach knew that my hand was broken, or he suspected it was broken, and he was overwhelmed. He said, "Look at this man, nothing deters him." I liked all that. These were compliments. I said, people will now recognize that all of the work I did around the house, and the sickle and the wheelbarrow and the sledgehammer gave me the stamina that I couldn't measure. The problem was in education, reading books. I couldn't measure my brain. I couldn't see any change in the brain. When I got finished trying to struggle through the book, I felt about the same as I did when I started. So I said, what am I doing? I haven't accomplished anything. And I began to doubt my ability. I became convinced that I did not have the ability, but so what? I could always play football or basketball. And then an experience occurred that I'm sure most of you have witnessed directly or indirectly. And it really affected me. Someone told me that one of the popular artists had just come out with a new song. And the song was fantastic. And everybody was talking about the song. It was about 3 hours later that the song came on the radio, and I heard the song along with a lot of my friends. When the song was finished, I started humming the song and repeating the song, and I hadn't taken any notes at all. I hadn't said, and let me see, did you get that word? Let me write it down. I wasn't frowning. I wasn't straining. I wasn't taxing myself. I simply drank the words in, internalized them, and I was ready to apply them. Later on, I asked myself, how could this possibly happen? There are young black Americans who are classified as mentally retarded by the public school systems. They say they can't learn. But they can remember all the intricate words of the rap songs. I can't hardly make out the words. I keep straining. What did they say? What did they say? Can't you hear? And of course it is obvious that if a young person can learn the words of that song, they can learn physics or math or biology, geometry, architecture, engineering, computers. Then why aren't they doing it? There are two elements that went into the learning process of these millions of young people around the world who hear the records. One is they are convinced that they can do it. They've done it before. All their friends are doing it. It's a part of the peer group. So they don't ask themselves whether they can do it or not. They just begin to apply it. Self-confidence. The second thing is that they can visualize the internal benefit of having learned the song. So they visualize themselves with their friends singing the song, or at a dance or at a recreational activity, and they identify with the image and they extract the joy or the excitement of that image. It becomes an unconscious part of their personality. So as soon as the record starts, they start smiling. As soon as the physics lecture starts, they start frowning. As soon as the rhythm of the beat proceeds, they start nodding. As soon as the chemistry or English or French or even Arabic lesson starts, on their face, doubt can be seen. And rather than to admit the doubt, they say, this really is important. How am I going to use this? Why do I need English grammar? I mean, I'm not going to be an author of books. I'm going to be in my father's business, or I'm going to be a housewife. So why don't I just take those courses that will help me realize my goals? That's all I want. But that is a little bit of a cop-out. That's not really all that you want. But that's all that you believe that you can do. Because the image is not there. The internal image of your ability. What I would like to do for the next couple minutes is raise the internal image that is unconscious and make it conscious. I want to prove to you how great your mind is and how easy it is to learn. Just like the record. Excitement is needed. Self-confidence is needed. The visualization of how you're going to use this information, and the rest is done. That's why the Quran says over and over, seek knowledge. Seek means that it's an effort. It's something that you pursue. Seek knowledge. If it is necessary to go to China, don't even think about it. Go to China. Why would you go to China? For money? No. For excitement? No. for knowledge. The Islamic societies were at their highest level of achievement when they stressed reading and they relied on knowledge as a testimony and as the criterion for their faith. The very first thing, as I have said over and over at every speech I have given, that was spoken to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Iqra. Then it was repeated, Iqra. And then it was repeated, Iqra. The first word was not pray. The first word was not stay away from alcohol. Stay away from cigarettes. The very first message, read. That is the importance to which Allah attaches to reading. Through the years, we have abandoned reading virtually. Brother Al-Jahis, an African born in Iraq in the 1800s AD, wrote 120 books in his lifetime. He was famous because he would go to a bookstore and he would pay the owner of the bookstore to let him have the bookstore for the whole night. For the whole night he would be in his heaven reading books. You ask if the books that he read were confined to the Quran, and I must tell you no. Al-Jahis was the father of zoology. He wrote about plants and animals based upon observation. He dissected animals and captured the biological structures and functions of animals, and he wrote it. 120 books, he wrote about everything. He was comfortable in the world of ideas. So when the rulers were planning for buildings, they would call Al-Jahis, how should we design this building? When they were planning roads, when they were planning for the care of the people, Al-Jahis come. Why? Because he was a man of knowledge. And based upon his reading and thinking and investigation, the society was able to move. There was another brother in Arabia of African descent by the name of Antar. Have you heard of Antar? Antar was, if I might be permitted the luxury of using some pedestrian language, Antar was a bad brother. His mother was captured as a slave. And Antar saw a lovely Arabian princess, and he said to himself, I want this lady as my wife. And her father said, how? This is long before the birth of the prophet. Peace be upon him. He said, Antar, how could you expect me to give my daughter to a slave? I mean, you have to be realistic. I mean, we recognize that you're an interesting person and you keep people laughing all the time, but Antar, please, this is my daughter. What will the neighbors say? Antar said, all I have to offer is my genuine love. And Antar started writing about his feelings poetically. He one time met a lion trying to attack the herd. He was only about 8 or 9 years old, but his job was to watch the herd. And the lion saw the herd and saw little brother Antar and decided that immediate gratification of the biological urges was certainly stronger than any fear that this lion might have of this young man. And Antar killed the lion. And the word went everywhere. I mean, people all over Arabia start talking about Antar. And he wrote a poem about the lion. He said, "You herd, who said that you are the king of the jungle? I have slain thee. Am I not the king of the jungle?" Antar proceeded to develop physically, mentally, intellectually, and he continued to pursue ideas. And in the Kaaba, they put his poetry up on the top of the ceiling. He was regarded as the most intelligent and accomplished poet in Arabia. He was also regarded as the strongest man that Arabia had ever produced. He was also regarded as the most courteous and respected person that Arabia had ever produced. In Saudi Arabia today, you will hear teachers tell their students, "Don't misbehave or you will never grow up to be like Antar." His fame lives from his day until now. About 1,500 years ago he lived, but everyone remembers Antar. And of course, he married the young lady of his affection. And he traveled in Europe, he traveled throughout the Middle East, conquering and exploring, but knowledge became an obsession. This characteristic was the approach to life that we Muslims took in the earlier days. We have lost that. We now prefer distractions. If I tell you, here is our choice, let's go down the street and demonstrate for the Palestinians, or let's read 3 books so that we can write a legal brief to represent them in the world court, which would we do? Going down the street's easy. Just get up and say, "Let's go. No one better get in my way." But reading the books to prepare the brief that will do more for the Palestinians than being on the corner, say, "Well, this guy is intelligent, let him do it." But it's, I'm not sure. I was never too good at that law. Those books are pretty thick and heavy, and I think I'm going to pass. Now, we are all for the Palestinian. The question is, what is the best way to help the Palestinian? What is the greatest thing you have to offer? You are students. The greatest thing you have to offer is knowledge if you read. If you don't read, you have the ignorance of your hearts. That's it. And that's why the Islamic world has become confused and weakened, because we have failed to comply with the first command, read. We do anything else, television, gossip, even have sewing circle, play cards, go shopping, look at fashions, anything you want, just don't read. And if you read, let it be something you can memorize in a hurry. Sometimes we even cheat. Say, "Look, if you go to the class, what's that instructor like? And I can't do all that work. Could you help me and show me?" And some students even put answers on their hand. They write it down there. I know you don't do that. It's because abandoning the important function of reading. If your mind is just a muscle. If you do not use your mind, it gets hard and it contracts. And when you want to use it, there's nothing there. You live by rote. It's the saddest thing in the world. You will be bored for the rest of your life because your mind is dead. You can function mechanically. You can cook, you can sew, you can have children, but your mind is dead. It's the same as if you don't eat food, you will die. It is fine to observe Ramadan from sunup to sundown, but if you try to observe Ramadan for 2 months in a row straight, you will surely die. And in the course of your death, you know what happens to your cells? They become cannibalistic. Your cells go into open revolt and they start attacking other cells, striving to stay alive. And your body shrivels and your stomach gets big. These are the biological manifestations of starvation. Your cells are trying to do anything they can to stay alive. So they attack the closest thing to them. So fat people get skinny because all the tissue is under attack. No defenses. Your body is showing you nature at work. Nature does not want to be cannibalistic. Your cells don't want to eat each other. They want to eat nourishment. Some chicken curry, some rice. That's what the cells want. You leave them with some tasteless, nasty cells to eat. The mind is the same. You don't feed the mind, it will die. And in the course of dying, you become cantankerous, you become uninformed, you become unable to make major decisions. That is the reason that every society of slavery would not let the slave read. They wanted the slave to die mentally, not physically. There's an interesting book that you must read called The Arrogant Faith. The name of the author is Forrest Woods, so that's easy. Woods and Forrest, no problem. And when they tried to convert the African slave in America, similar practice occurred here. They had to go to the plantation owner and to the municipal government and to the state government. The missionaries said, we would like permission to come on your plantation just on Sundays and preach to the slaves. The owner said, you must be crazy. You will not be preaching to my slaves. They need to rest up in order to be ready for 4 in the morning on Monday. So they pleaded with them. They said, if you will let us teach your slaves, they will be better slaves. We promise you. The master said, no way. They're going to start reading things in that Bible, and there's things that will confuse them. They're not that bright anyway. But there are little passages that you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. They'll think they can leave this plantation. So the Christian missionaries say, we give you our word. If you let us convert that slave to Christianity, he will be docile. You can even rape his wife or his daughter or his mother, and he will not say anything except, thank you, Jesus. We promise that. He'll be a better worker. You'll never see him pout. Every time you come around, he say, yes, boss. We'll promise that if you just let us convert him. He will never run away if you let us convert him to Christianity. He's a Muslim now. He may be dangerous as a Muslim. He may run away. All these Muslims stick together. It is not practical. No. It is not practical to keep this man in that state of mind as a Muslim. So what did the plantation owner say? Give him Christianity. Go ahead. And we're going to test you, though, and see if it works. And it worked. Because the slave was not permitted to read. In the United States, if a slave had a book in his hand, he could be killed. If he didn't prove that he wasn't reading it, if he didn't prove that he wasn't carrying it, he could be killed. What was the purpose? Keep the mind dormant. And that's what we have done. We don't read. We make excuses. We say we'd like to, or one day we will, but we don't believe that there's value in reading. We don't see where reading is going to advance us spiritually, physically, or economically. Just read what you have to for class, but nothing else. You will be a zombie. You must read everything. You must read literature, you must read architecture, you must read art, you must read religion, you must be computers, you must read and read and read. How do you get started? You just get your friends and you tell them, look, I don't like reading and you don't like reading, but let's go read this book and let's talk about it. A book discussion group. One of my friends in Washington, D.C. just started one. 12 people. A little more than a year later, 2,500 every week in Washington, D.C., reading books about everything. So that you have a healthy climate. People see the drug problem decline, the crime problem decline, your personality's balanced. You can think for yourself, you can make judgments for yourself because you have something to base it on. So that every idea that someone suggests, let's do this or let's do that, you say first, let us reason about it. What is the purpose? What do we want to accomplish? Is there a better way? Is there a more practical way? Is there a more strategic plan? That becomes the function of reading. That's what reading does. There are some shortcuts for reading, and I think you might find them valuable. Before you read a book, if you are like me, if you already like reading, you don't need these hints. But reading was the most difficult thing I'd ever done. I have never done anything as more difficult than reading, because I couldn't see the progress. You keep talking about, yeah, it'll make your brain grow and it'll make you feel good. But I didn't see that. I didn't have that experience. It didn't make me feel good. It made me feel bored and made me feel I was wasting my time. So I would take the book and I would start asking questions. Who wrote this book? I bet it was someone big and fat and probably dumb. And I bet there's about at least 400 pages. It feels like I haven't opened the book at all. There's at least 400 pages in this book. And I bet the author was only about 3 feet tall anyway. And I bet he didn't even organize the book properly. I bet there is no methodology in that book at all. Now, what am I doing? I am involving my mind and my emotions in the book. I haven't read anything. So when I pick up the book, and I see the book was written in 1913, and I'd already said it was written in the 1800s, it pops in my mind. When I see the author's name, and I said his name was Abbott, and it was really Franklin, it pops in my mind. When I look at the chapter headings, and I see that they are organized, I start wondering how and what is the methodology. Then I take one word out of each chapter heading. I still haven't read the book. One word out of each chapter heading, and I take the letter of that word and I make a phrase or a sentence. Maybe I will use Dr. Most Bad. So out of chapter 1, I will get the theme, and it may be D. I say that's D. The next chapter, and when I string it together, I know the theme of every chapter in the book, and I haven't read a page. So I build a framework. I build a level of self-confidence. I get a feeling that I know what that's about. If I give a person who speaks Urdu an Urdu newspaper, he takes it right away because there's no barrier. If I give him a German newspaper, he just he hesitates. If I give an African American magazine, he just grabs it, looks at the pictures and starts smiling. This is Michael Jackson, this is James Brown. If I give him a Russian magazine, he just kind of looks at it and puts it down. Because the confidence level isn't there. He doesn't think he's ever seen anything like that before, but what he knows he has seen before, he takes that and it becomes the basis of his confidence to read. Now, I'm suggesting this as a technique for building confidence and enthusiasm for reading. Now, in short, what future does the young person have today? If you don't read, you don't have a future. So I can stop and you will have my complete message. If you don't read, it's over. You have nothing to contribute. Nothing from nothing leaves nothing. Nothing from nothing leaves nothing. We want everything but reading. Let me get involved. I want to be in the jihad. I want to go on what? Ignorance? The biggest problem that we have right now in the Middle East is that we have people who are responding to emotions, not reason and not judgment. So we are manipulated. People sit down and they just laugh at us. He said, look, you want to have some fun? We can make this one attack that one. No problem. All we have to do is tell him, did you hear what he said about you? He said what? Sure, I mean, he may not have meant it. I'm not sure. I can't say he meant it. I mean, I heard him say that. But I can't say before Allah that he really meant it. The only thing I can say is, you know, I didn't like it when he said it. The way he said it, you know, it just kind of struck me as a kind of a nasty thing. Marshal the troops. There's no evaluation. Was it really said? If it was, so what? What does it really mean? Who's going to be affected by it? Emotion. That's not the way the Islamic community operated before. But that's the only thing you have to operate on. If you have ignorance, you have emotion. Don't expect anything else. How could there be? There is nothing else. There's knowledge and ignorance. That's what ignorance means, not knowing, right? So if you don't know, you're ignorant. And if you know, you're not ignorant. So if you don't know, you operate on ignorance. And that is the cause of the spiritual decline of Islam. We are still getting more and more people, but we're falling apart inside, blaming everyone but ourselves. He's wrong and she's wrong. And I know this brother doesn't really believe in the Quran. And this brother, even when he's praying, I saw him, his eyes are open. Did you see that? We are reduced to recyclers of emotional ignorance. Instead of coming together and saying, look, brother, have you read this book? This thing is unbelievable. You know, if we implement this program, we can move our community from this point to this point and open up 200 jobs in the process. But we better get a computer and make sure that it will really work. Who knows how to run a computer? I don't know, brother, but I'll get a book and see if I can learn the computer. Then I'll go to the center and ask them if I can practice what I'm learning. But even if we have a computer, we need an accounting system. Well, I hate math. I mean, I can't stand math, but if we really need an accounting system, there's no one else willing to do it, I will try my best. That's knowledge. That's what supports progress. But that takes time, and that takes discipline, and that takes sacrifice. It's easier just to give a speech. Allahu Akbar! Say, that brother, you can feel it. He's sincere. Please. Are we talking about sincerity, or are we talking about knowledge? Did you read ever in the Quran where the faithful was told to go all the way to China if necessary to find sincerity? Go all the way to China if necessary to find how to pray? Go all the way to China if necessary to find the latest fashions? He said, the only thing I'm telling you about China to go that distance is for knowledge. Search the universe. The universe. It is in the universe that you find Allah. He could have easily told you, don't read anything but the Quran. And that would have sounded very appealing. Search the universe. That's comprising sociology, psychology, history, geology, mathematics, astronomy. Search the universe. That is your future. If you do not master the computer, your opportunities in life in the future will be very dismal. You can be an engineer, you can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer. Learn how the computer works. Everything will be related to the computer. And if you don't know it, you'll be out of step. So what does one do? They get to the center and they say, can we meet here on Saturday to get computer practice? We need to build in the computer. We need to set up a profile of management. Do you realize the Muslims are some of the most inefficient people on earth? Inefficient. You criticize the Jews, they are generally more efficient. You criticize the Japanese, they are generally more efficient. Why are we efficient? Inefficient. I've heard many explanations. Some have said it's in our blood. It's just somehow something that we inherited. Others have said it's just nature, the hot climates. People who grow up in hot climates become lazy and they don't want to work and they don't want to do anything. I'm telling you, it's because we don't read and we're not disciplined. And that's what Ramadan is for. That's what it's all about. Ramadan is teaching you how to discipline your moods when you don't feel like it. You don't always feel like missing a meal from sunup to sundown. But the discipline that you get in observing Ramadan should carry you into the library when you don't feel like going to the library to study. That's the reason you build that discipline up, so that you can employ it throughout the year. We have an appointment at 5 o'clock, we wander in at 6. Salaam alaikum, brother, like nothing happened. And then when we give an excuse, it's usually a lie. Or, you know, brother, this is what happened, and we build in. Allah doesn't send the sun up one morning at 6 o'clock, and then the next morning at 4 in the afternoon. You'd be totally confused. That's why you search the universe, to see the patterns of nature. And you say, if Allah is giving us a pattern, then we ought to do it. You ought to set aside 2 hours a day for outside reading. Don't start off that way, you might get discouraged. Start with 10 minutes, then 15 minutes, then a half hour. But your goal is 2 hours a day, I'm going to read something that doesn't relate to my class. I'm building my mind. You become addicted to it. You start deriving happiness and peace and thrills from the material that you read. You can then help your brother because you have something to base the help on. Not just impulse. We ought to do this. This would be interesting. And why don't we do this? And halfway through it, no, this is a better idea. That's confusion. Allah is not the author of confusion and disorder. In the Quran is the blueprint. If we would only listen. Now, what I'm going to do is stop, and I want to entertain questions from you of areas that you might want me to comment on. And you can ask anything you like, as I've said at all of my addresses. I will try my best to answer any questions that you have, and please don't be reluctant. I am here for the purposes of trying to respond to your questions. Are there questions?